Hello, hello! Welcome to the Dragon's Lair podcast. My name is Cavill, and this is going to be the first of many podcast streams for the channel. This originally went out as a stream, but due to audio issues, I basically want to redo it. Let's begin. The last 48 hours have been an incredibly stressful period for me. You might be wondering why I didn't stream on Wednesday. Due to unforeseen personal circumstances, I was unlucky to have had my wallet stolen on Wednesday afternoon, and I couldn't actually stream because I had to prioritize making sure I wasn't going to become a victim of identity theft. So I had to go through the rigmarole of contacting the police, and then my banks, and then the shopping centre in which it was stolen. Unfortunately, it did absorb the rest of my evening, and I had to make sure that I wasn't going to have any negative sort of experiences with that. The following day, I did end up visiting the police and lodging my claim. Unfortunately, life throws you these curveballs at times, and you just have to adapt and endure it. So, this morning, though, I actually had a bit of success. I received a call from Centre Management, and apparently a Good Samaritan had found my wallet and had taken it to Centre Management for collection. So I collected it. It was sadly noticeably lighter. It only had my gym card in it, and it was pretty filthy. It looked like it was dumped in some nearby nature strip. I had, however, on the Wednesday night already ordered a new ID and some new cards, so I lost nothing of importance. The police are also more than aware that my cards are out there, though. So I had a bit of a win with that. It was a small win, but it was a win all the same. So I just wanted to say thank you to all the people who've been supporting me on my Instagram over the last few days, and I appreciate it all. So, like I said in the original stream that I had for this, with all the audio problems, today I wanted to explore my channel and what the future holds for it. The initial plan is to continue my Sekiro playthrough and then move on to Stellar Blade as the schedule states. I want to continue playing action RPGs and difficult games because they present a challenge and require persistence to achieve completing them. The schedule I've made is designed to hold myself accountable and to continue building content on the channel. That's another thing that you've probably noticed on my Instagram, especially my gaming channel. I am going to start generating more content on that because I want to make it grow. I want to explore the things that excite me. I want to explore the things that make me passionate. And so that allows me to pivot to the next point. When I made this channel 6 years ago, I think, I made sure that I wasn't going to become a bandwagoner wherever possible. So the idea is, for this hobby at the moment, I'm just going to play games and explore things that I really, really enjoy or feel passionate about. The last thing that I want to do is play games that I don't get excited to do or anything like that. There are games that I like to talk about the lore, the game mechanics, and other fun facts about it. That said, my initial plan is to get myself a capture card so that I can start playing my Switch on stream and start exploring all of the new Pokemon games, Sword and Shield, and all of the other ones, because I have very little experience with any Pokemon games post 3DS. So since Ultra Moon and Ultra Sun, I have not touched a Pokemon game. I did have a living Pokedex at one point, which was really quite cool. Don't have that anymore. Primarily, though, I want to get a capture card so that I can explore the Zelda franchise, which has long been dear to my heart. King upon them, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. No game in my childhood had such a great impact on me the way that this one did. It set aflame my already burgeoning love for time travel and it very much supercharged it. The idea of a 3-day cycle to save the world, NPCs with set behaviors that could be altered by your actions, and how you could redo your failures and learn from them and change your fate. I fell immediately in love with it. When I went to Japan, I think it was in 2017, I bought myself this. This is the Nintendo 3DS Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask Strategy Guide. It's both a prize collectible now and an excellent way for me to continue learning Japanese. So I'm hoping to stream that soon. It should be really, really fun. And you'll see why. I will no doubt talk about it endlessly when we get to that point. You can also see on my gaming Instagram that I posted up about the sealed original copy of the game that I purchased while I was over there too. Like I said, the game is very important to me, and I can't wait to play it. The second reason to play the get the capture card is to eventually explore the other games in the Zelda franchise. I still have Tears of the Kingdom to play, and so what better way to play it than to stream it for your benefit. The third benefit, the final benefit of getting a stream capture card will be to stream Bloodborne, one of the few Sony exclusives that has not yet been transferred onto Steam. I still wonder why Sony hasn't decided to do that. I guess they don't want to print money. The overall aim is to get my capture card sometime in April, so that's something to look forward to. If you have been following my Instagram, which you can find in the link below in the description, I want to be including more gaming and pop culture posts about upcoming streams and things that interest me. You can expect playthroughs of the Mass Effect trilogy, and more action RPGs like Neo, The Surge, and basically whatever else draws my interest. Speaking of that, I do want to start doing more of these podcasty kind of videos. Hopefully we'll be able to do them on stream without the terrible audio issues that we've experienced. I still got to try and figure that out. But I want to start discussing movies and games and books and anime that interest me. Heaven only knows that I have many and varied opinions on these topics, and I realize that this particular platform gives me the opportunity to discuss them at length, and getting me to shut up about them is probably going to be the biggest goal, because I can and I will talk at length, but I am going to try and pace myself. The reason why is pretty obvious. Since I was old enough to remember, I have wanted to be a published author, and I love narratives, and I love exploring stories and philosophy and everything underpinning all of them. So, what better place to start than me discussing some of my old favorite TV shows and movies. And we're going to begin with my all-time favorites, Firefly and Serenity. So, as a browncoat of old, Firefly was one of those shows that was cancelled too soon, but it still holds a dear place in my heart. I was going to show off my signed copies of Serenity and Firefly, but I couldn't find it. I think they're in a box somewhere. So I wanted to show off how I've met every single member of the cast. So Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk and Ron Glass before he passed away. Jill State, Summer Glau. I've met every single cast member except for Gina Torres and the creator Joss Whedon. They would be the perfect signatures for me to get. But I will do my best to find those copies before my next yapping podcast. So when you return to the Lair, so I can show them off. Firefly was probably one of the most unique series I have ever seen. It was a sci-fi western, especially coming from Whedon's other work, Buffy and Angel. It was appealing for me to see the found family of the crew and their home on the Firefly ship Serenity. Seeing how they dealt with the Alliance, or how they were exploring the deepening mystery of the Bluestone Corporation. Unfortunately, and I have to explore this as a dedicated browncoat for decades, the show was cancelled by Fox executives tampering with the episode airing and putting it in the Friday night death slot. So, you gotta remember, this was during the pre-streaming era, during the Prime Network period, and placing it on a Friday night was a surefire guarantee that nobody was going to watch. So naturally, I discovered the show after seeing the movie Serenity in 2005, and I went back to the show. If I remember correctly, I bought the show on DVD, and I watched all 13 episodes in a single sitting. And I remember 3 a.m. the following morning, after finishing it and feeling torn, realizing that that was all there was. So I did what any fan does in that situation. I rewatched it. So in future podcasts, I am going to be looking into exploring this a little bit more. But let's move on to some of my more controversial takes. So I recently rewatched Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, The Ultimate Cut. I can say, without a hint of irony, that these are some of my favorite superhero movies. I know they're not everybody's, but I've always enjoyed them. Man of Steel in particular, because it is based on Plato's The Republic. So, in 357 BC, Plato wrote a manuscript called The Republic, and it explored many elements of what makes an ideal city, or the ideal forms of governance, all that sort of stuff. Really, really interesting. So, as part of this podcast, I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive of this, and there'll be another deep dive on a different philosophy coming up soon. So, Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, which was made in 2013, is deeply rooted in classical philosophy, particularly the Republic. While on the surface it does appear to be an action-heavy superhero origin story, the thematic backbone is very inspired by Plato's ideas on social engineering, the noble lie, the allegory of the cave, and the nature of the philosopher king. So these are all topics that I'm going to discuss in context of Man of Steel. So, if you recall, Man of Steel begins on Krypton, and Krypton, in Zack Snyder's take, is very much based on the idea of Calopolis, the ideal state. Plato describes Calopolis as the ideal city, governed by a rigid class structure. He argues that for a society to be stable, its citizens must be divided into three classes: the rulers, the warriors, and the producers, so the workers. In the film, Zack Snyder has very much made that a very, very true sort of element. Citizens are not born naturally into this version of Krypton. They are engineered in Genesis chambers. Each person is genetically predetermined to be a leader, a warrior, or a worker. General Zod, the chief of the Kryptonian military, was literally built genetically from the cells up to be the warrior class. And then the council, as you can see in the film, dressed in gold, which is the rulership caste. In very many ways, the entire film is, the entire Kryptonian element of the film is based on that dystopic sort of worldview. It's the reason why Zod begins his coup at the beginning of the film. It's because he can see that the stagnancy and the stubbornness of the rulership class has led Krypton to ruin, and Zod can't protect a Krypton if it doesn't have any people. And that's part of the motivation that drives him to hunt down Kal-El in the later parts of the film. Which leads me to the next part, the Codex and the Noble Lie. So, we're going to stick to the very beginning of that film. We're going to stick to the Kryptonian Codex. So, in Plato's The Republic, he explains the concept of the Noble Lie. It's a story sold to citizens to make them accept their place in the social hierarchy. He believed that if people believed they were born to fulfill a specific role by divine or natural nature, they wouldn't rebel. And in the film, the Codex represents that noble lie for Krypton. It's the genetic blueprint for the entire Kryptonian race. By stealing the Codex and bonding it to Kal-El, Jor-El is breaking that lie. So, if you remember correctly at the start of the film, Lara gives birth to Kal. He's the first natural birth in a millennia on Krypton. So much so that when Zod arrives at the Citadel to confront Jor-El, he declares it heresy, because to have a natural birth goes against all Kryptonian beliefs in this society. When Jor-El gave his son the DNA of everybody, that genetic blueprint, and combined it with a natural birth, he gave his son the freedom to choose who he became. And that's a driving force for Zod's actions throughout the rest of the film. He's so eager to rebuild Krypton that he's willing to sacrifice Kal to get the genetic blueprint back. Because a man who's genetically predisposed to defend his people, who has no people to protect, has to rebuild it so he has a purpose again. From there, the movie pivots to the third element of the Republic, the allegory of the cave. Now, this is a famous idea. It's that we're all trapped in the cave, and the shadows are our entertainment. But one curious folk, or maybe two, realize that they are in the depths of the cave, and they struggle, and they work their way through obstacles, and eventually they come to the opening of the cave, and they see light for the first time. The sun. One prisoner escapes and realizes that the shadows are a lie. He then feels an obligation to return to the cave, to save and lead the others, even if they react with fear or violence. In the film, Clark is that escaped prisoner. He is the only one who can see the world the way it truly is. As Jor-El tells Clark, after he learns about his Kryptonian origins, you will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive for. They will race behind you. They will stumble. They will fall. But in time, they will join you in the sun. This is a direct reference to the allegory of the cave, where Clark will lead humanity into the light, essentially. There are two more elements I'm just going to explore in this deep dive for this particular story. In Book 2 of the Republic, the figure Glaucon tells the story of the Ring of Gyges, which grants its wearer invisibility. Now, that's a interesting sort of exploration, which I will probably explore in a later deep dive of Lord of the Rings, especially the theatrical versions of the film. Basically, Glaucon argued that any man, no matter how virtuous or just, would eventually use the power of invisibility to steal, to kill, and rule, because justice is something people do because they fear being caught. In the movie, the way that Zack Snyder translated that idea was this was the central conflict of Clark's childhood. Jonathan Kent fears that if the world sees what Clark can do, they will be terrified of his power. Clark essentially possesses the ultimate Ring of Gyges. He's invulnerable and can do anything without consequence. And it's interesting how that particular element in Snyder's Man of Steel continues on in Batman vs. Superman, and it's part of the core conflict that Bruce Wayne has with the Kryptonian. And that's definitely a topic I'm going to discuss further in a later podcast for this. So the movie's answer to Plato in this particular scenario is that Clark chooses who to be, and he chooses to be just, not because of law or fear of punishment, but because his nurture, his upbringing by the Kents, proves Glaucon wrong by remaining a moral agent despite the powers of a god. And this is a concept that's explored in the Injustice storyline and it is touched on briefly in the nightmare sequences of Batman vs Superman and the Justice League. Well, Zack Snyder's Justice League. After that, there is one more element of this deep dive I'm going to explore for the podcast, and that is the idea of the philosopher king. Plato once argued that the best ruler would be a philosopher king, someone who does not want power but assumes it out of a sense of duty, because they are the only ones who can truly understand the good. So, if you recall in Man of Steel, Zod wants to rule because that's what he was programmed to do. He's genetically predisposed to protect Krypton. Clark's story, if you remember correctly, he begins in exile. He's moving from place to place. He's on the trawler at the beginning. He helps the workers in the oil refinery. Then he finds himself at the truck stop, and then he finds himself at the Arctic military base where he discovers the Kryptonian ship. He has no desire for that. He just wants to understand his place in the world. And it's not until he touches base with Jor-El on that Kryptonian ship that he learns of his origins. And by the end of the film, he becomes a guardian in the most platonic sense. He's a protector who stands above the people but serves them, guided by moral philosophy rather than a thirst for authority, which again is touched on in the nightmare sequence. I can, and I probably will, discuss my thoughts on Batman vs Superman and why it's my favorite superhero movie off the basis of this exploration of Man of Steel as a retelling of Plato's The Republic. There are degrees of Christendom in the film as well, which we'll also touch on in a later podcast. But for this specific podcast, I just want to touch on a few things, explore some philosophy, and then from there we'll start figuring out what I'll be discussing in my future podcasts. So the next topic I want to discuss is anime. So because this is my primary platform for exploring things that I enjoy and like, anime is another one of those things. Oh, sorry. That's a bit better. I've loved anime. I've loved anime for as long as I can remember, especially ones like Dragon Ball, which for my generation was huge. Vale Akira Toriyama, you are missed. And especially with Dragon Ball, I'm going to enjoy exploring the lore and the fan theories and the character discussions, ranging from the color theory of the Dragon Ball Super Broly film to elements of the superhero film to a general exploration of the entirety from the beginning of Dragon Ball all the way through to Super, and how Goku originally begins as a retelling of the Journey to the West story. Also expect me to discuss my love of the shonen series Fairy Tail and the adaptation of the light novel series Konosuba and its delicious subversion of the isekai genre. It's a series that I really, really enjoy. I'm even probably going to explore older favorites like Full Metal Alchemist and its interesting philosophical discussions, along with Infinite Stratos and other favorites. But today, and to round out the end of this particular podcast, I'm going to be discussing books and my love of it. I have been a bibliophile for as long as I can remember, always reading stuff. And today, for the podcast, we are going to explore the Wheel of Time, beginning with the Eye of the World. So, the Wheel of Time is a book series written by Robert Jordan, and it's 14 books long, and it's a story about how the heroes of light contend against the Dark One. It explores the journey of the Dragon Reborn, Rand al'Thor, and his struggles and triumphs against evil. That copy that I showed you is my 2004 reprint of that series. My favorite character in the book series is the roguish Matt Cawthon, a figure bound to destiny who gives up his eye to save the world. Now, When Robert Jordan was creating the character archetypes for the series, Matt Cawthon was the Odinic archetype. So from his basic character design, his broad hat, to his single eye, to his knowledge of the past, even the Ashendari, his spear that he carries. A vital part of his storyline even involves him being hung from the branches of the Avendasora, the Tree of Life. All of these elements are very similar to the Odinic story. Odin, of course, being the All-Father and the chief of the Norse pantheon. Many of these elements match up, along with the fact that Matt is a gambler and he's renowned for his line, Doviande se toiva sagain. Time to roll the dice, because the All-Father Odin, as the Wanderer, or as Logan, was indeed a gambler, and what better gamble, or biggest gamble, was that of conflict. And there's a reason why Odin was such a figure. He was also quite notably a philanderer as well, which is another element that Matt has inside the book. But that's not really what I want to talk about when it comes to this particular element of the story. Today, I'm going to be talking about the central conceit in the Wheel of Time, which is the eternal return. The book series famously begins with "The wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend." Jordan explores the idea of the karmic cycle, and how people are bound to the thread of life. It is an interesting Gnostic concept that I explored many, many years ago as a teen, and it really awoken me to the understanding of that world and the concepts of metaphysics that bind us. So, fun fact, when I was in school, many of my friends couldn't understand the appeal that metaphysics had on me. I would ask the question, are we not more than our mortal shells? Are we not connected in ways that defy our material comprehension? I love the idea that our souls are bound to cycles, that the people we meet, the lessons we learn, the people we love are always destined to happen. That our past lives, we are bound to the same energies and the same interactions, just on repeat. Some of us are always destined to be together. Some of us are always destined to be in conflict, but we are meant to learn from these lessons. It's kind of like that ideal, and I do touch on it in the stream that I did earlier, and that's part of the reason why I'm redoing this with proper audio, is that I like the idea that if you've ever met somebody and you just instantly connect, the idea is that your souls have returned, reincarnated, and there's such a degree of familiarity that you find it easy to connect to one another, like you've known each other forever. This is a concept that Jordan explores in The Wheel of Time, and the element of that sort of karmic connection I want to explore today is the idea that love is a recurring karmic resonance. It's not something that happens to people, it's something that people are designed for. So, I'm going to use a couple of examples from The Wheel of Time for the purposes of this discussion, because, well, I am talking about my love of the book series after all. And it's also really quite illustrative of how we connect. So, the archetypical anchor of The Wheel of Time with love as that karmic resonance is the love between Birgit Silverbow and Guidal Kine. They are both heroes of the horn, bound to the wheel to be spun out together again every single age. So I did touch on it in my stream, but the Wheel of Time, imagine it like a loom, and on that loom there are the threads of life. So my soul, your soul, the souls of everybody that you know. As the wheel turns, those threads are laid out into the pattern, and they interlock at different points in your life. The people that you're destined to meet, the people that are destined to fall in love with, the people that you are destined to learn from. That pattern is created as every single thread overlaps. And in the Wheel of Time, the love between Burgett and Geidel is destined to happen every time the wheel turns. It's a tragic symmetry with the love of the constant love between Burgett and Geidel. Geidel is always ugly, and Burgett is always a warrior. They always find one another. They love, and then they die. Now, this is a concept that DC actually used with Hawkman and Hawkgirl. The idea of two figures bound by love, destined to die and find themselves again and again and again. And from a karmic perspective, their love serves as a steady state. In the world of chaos, their bond is a fixed point. And this creates some interesting philosophical questions. Is it love if you're destined to always be with somebody? In the Wheel of Time especially, karma isn't just about moral retribution. It's about pattern function. The wheel requires certain people to be born into it, for certain functions to take place. And the lovers, the love between Geidel and Burgett, is a fundamental element of that. Their love is a gravitational pull, a karmic necessity that ensures the story of humanity maintains its shape. It's also something that I'll touch on when I explore the Dune series, another series that is very, very dear to my heart. The character of Duncan Idaho is that figure. After his death in the original series, he's brought back again and again and again. And eventually, the God Emperor Leto II is asked, why do you keep bringing him back? And Leto tells him, Duncan represents the best of us, that savage wildness, but that deep, deep loyalty and that deep, rugged soul of humanity that we have. And I'll explore that more in greater detail when I finally explore that particular topic. And that leaves me to the concept that this particular love, though, is also a shackle. It raises the philosophical question: if you are destined to love the same soul for eternity, do you have agency? Or are you a puppet dancing on the threads of the pattern? For the Forsaken characters in The Wheel of Time, the rejection of fated love is an attempt at liberation. One of the Forsaken, Lanfear, has an obsession with the character of Luz Thurin Telamon, and it represents a bit of a perversion of this element. She doesn't actually love the soul of the character. She loves the power and the role that comes from it. And she seeks to break the Gnostic prison, not to find peace, but to become the jailer. Conversely, I did a pretty big deep dive on this, and I'm kind of reading from the script because I like to make sure I've got a bit of structure when it comes to this particular podcast. Conversely, the gnosis, or the understanding that Rand achieves atop Dragonmount in The Gathering Storm, he rejects Ishmael's nihilism. Rand realizes that the purpose of the wheel's turning is to give humanity a second chance to do it better and to love again. Now, that's an interesting philosophical concept, and it ties back to that metaphysics I was discussing, how my energy is always destined to reconnect with different people through every cycle. And the idea is that you learn from the experience so that you can reconnect with those people that you're destined to be with. And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes obstacles happen. Sometimes things don't pan out exactly the way you hoped the first time. But that doesn't mean that it can't happen and you can't work through the obstacles to eventually connect the way that you're supposed to. It's kind of ironic that I'm talking about this particular topic when I began with my love of Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask is a 3-day cycle where every time you repeat it, you get a second chance to fix things that were broken. And what better way to represent that karmic cycle than by knowing full well that no bridge is ever broken or burnt. And sometimes all you have to do is ask or create that communication in order to rebuild that bridge, that connection, to open the door that you might think is closed, because you're destined to learn from it, and sometimes that's all it takes to re-spark the connection again. And I don't know why I'm getting so philosophical when it comes to this particular element. My last 6 months have been a very interesting experience with that, but I still hold out hope that sometimes, even though a thing might seem impossible, it's just a matter of figuring out how to circumvent the obstacles that are in your way. So, to continue on from where I left off, when Rand sits atop the snowy mountain of Dragon Mount, which is the tallest mountain in the entire, well, I believe they call it Randland, he comes to an understanding that that divine spark is love. And while his soul might be forced to repeat itself in the pattern again and again, and that pattern is deterministic, it has to weave the same way, the feeling of love is what provides that sense of transcendence. Rand realizes that despite his soul being reborn again and again, he's essentially arguing that love is the thing that makes the prison bearable. So in the Gnostic understanding, the demiurge has constructed a material prison around us, and all of our spirits are trapped within, essentially. And we are forced to go through these karmic cycles to learn lessons, to connect, to have conflict, and to otherwise grow. And Jordan explores this and expresses this in The Wheel of Time by understanding that love is the thing, the knowledge that allows the soul to continue to endure that constant karmic wheel where we continue to struggle and yet succeed without breaking. It's the thing that keeps us going, the knowledge that love is right there. In that same sort of concept, we see the karmic debt of love. One of the very first scene in The Eye of the World begins with the madness of Luz Thurin Telamon, the man called the Dragon. He and his 100 companions travel to a boar in order to lock away the Dark One. And in doing so, they are stricken with madness and corruption. And one of his first acts is to murder his wife Ilyena Sunhair in a fit of madness. And this is the original sin of the series. It acts as like a karmic debt that takes 3,000 years to heal. Rand's journey is not just about saving the world, it's about the karmic restitution of that love. It's the idea that Luz Thurin broke his original soul bond with Ilyena. And then when Rand was reborn, it was about him learning that lesson. And it explores the the Gnostic idea of the shattered soul. Luz Thurin and Rand are the same soul woven into the pattern once more. And it's a soul in conflict with his own history. It's that idea that when we've learnt a lesson in a past life, and it conflicts with the life we've lived now, how do you handle that dissonance between the two? And in part, it's the reason why Luz Thurin's inability to let go of Ilyena is what fuels the madness. In the context of The Wheel of Time, it forces Rand to remember what he lost so he doesn't make the same mistake again. And speaking as somebody who tends to spiral about mistakes and needing to learn how to put them aside, learn my lesson from it and leave it on the shelf, it's something that I can learn too. It's a valuable lesson in how I understand things. In the terms of Wheel of Time, the soul is scarred by a past life love so deep that you had to learn from it to proceed onward. And that leads me to the last primary philosophical discussion that I'm going to have about the Wheel of Time. The concept of the red thread. So, in Eastern Asian mythology, there's an idea of the red thread that connects those destined to meet. The idea is that, similar to Western ideas of soulmates and twin flames and that sort of thing, in Eastern philosophy, a red string connects two people that are destined to be together. In the Wheel of Time, this is literalized through the Tavaran nature. So, to explore the Wheel of Time, you have the Tavaran. So, as the wheel weaves its pattern, certain threads possess a Tavaran nature. Basically, they have a gravitational pull. It's something that pulls other threads towards them in order to achieve certain goals. And in the Wheel of Time, Rand, Matt, and their friend Perrin literally pull people into their orbits because they're so strong. And this turns the concept of fated love into a physical force. So a good way of explaining it in real life is sometimes you meet people and you instantly click. You instantly feel familiar with them. You know everything about them. It's like you've lived with them before. You've had that experience. Your soul is connected to them. There's that familiarity. I've definitely experienced it with a few people. It's hard to explain. You just kind of know. I won't really talk on my experiences of it, but it definitely exists as far as I'm concerned. So that leads us to the philosophical concept explored within the Wheel of Time, and I'm going to use Matt and Tuon as the example. So Matt is known as the Prince of Ravens. His ravens on his spear. He is the Odinic figure. He has the ravens, Hujin and Mujin. And then Tuon, the daughter of the 9 moons of the Shanshan. The question then becomes, is that fated love real because of the gravitational force? Or is it a sense of cosmic gaslighting, to use a more modern phrase? If the universe needs 2 people to be together, that love might just be a biological and spiritual compulsion rather than a choice. But that certainly does explore those ideas, especially in Western spirituality, of the idea of the twin flames, of 2 people who are 2 parts of the same soul, and they're destined to run and be separated, but eventually they get pulled back together again. This idea is also explored in a karmic standpoint, that love is a mechanism of continuity. The characters of Alan Mandragorian and Nynaeve fall in love during the series, and for a lot of readers initially it seemed like they're a bit of a mismatch. They're both extremely stubborn, they're both extremely proud, and yet they love one another because they're so familiar of one another. The idea is that their souls recognize a rhythm that they've danced to in thousands of previous lives, which again touches on what I said before. Sometimes you just know. Sometimes you meet somebody and there's the click, the snap, as you both realize that you're perfect together. And then finally, I want to explore the Gnostic standpoint of the red string, the red thread. So from a Gnostic standpoint, love is the Sophian element. It's the wisdom that descends into the darkness of the material world to guide the hero back into the light. And during the Wheel of Time, the Dark One represents the demiurge, the jailer of the material prison. And the Dark One, in this instance, can offer immortality, he can offer power, and he can offer destruction. But the book series is very clear in showing that he cannot offer the recognition that exists between two fated souls. The idea that for all of this power, he has zero understanding of love. And that's it. That's the end of my deep dive for this particular podcast. I did touch on everything in a previous stream, but the audio was terrible, so I've transitioned this over into the podcast. I'm tentatively calling it the Dragon's Lair. That's probably taken though, so I am going to try and figure out a better name for it before my next podcast episode. I'm thinking that this is going to run in parallel to the gaming streams I'm going to be doing, beginning again tomorrow at 6 o'clock with the continuation of my Sekiro playthrough, where we will be finishing up some side quests. We will be probably defeating our father at the Hirata Estate before we move on to Fountainhead Palace, and we begin the third act, which is where we're aiming for. So, thank you all for coming to the podcast. I do realize that some of these philosophical concepts are a bit heavy, but it is something that I'm passionate in and interested in, and I will continue to explore the different elements of the Wheel of Time as I continue reading through the series this year. I'm also probably going to start expanding outward. I'm going to start discussing Lord of the Rings, my understanding of the Silmarillion and Arda, and elements of the books and the theatrical films that took place. I'm also probably going to explore the hero's journey and prophecy in Dune, and the Dune series by Frank Herbert. And moving on, for this particular podcast, I'm going to explore more of my favorite books, movies, games, and so on over the next few months. I will figure out how to include clips and that sort of thing for these podcasts, and for the time being, my gaming will be done through live streams. Otherwise, I want to thank you all for coming to the podcast, and most importantly, stay shiny, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.